Bitcoin has proven itself over the last 10 years. It proved it hasn't been hacked. It's by and large, therefore, worked on an operational basis. It has built a significant following. It is an alternative, in a sense, storehold of wealth. It's like a digital cash. And those are the pluses. Bubbles are financial assets that have imputed value. It's an asset that doesn't have intrinsic value. It has imputed value. It's whatever we think it is. And if you look at some of the bubbles in the past, a great book is Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of the Crowds by McKay, 1845 or something. But he talks about the South Sea bubble, and he talks about the Mississippi bubble and so on. It is when people love it. It's the dot-com bubble and so on. And that could be. So when you look at Bitcoin, it's a possibility. It's an alternative because there aren't many such assets. There are not so many assets that might have intrinsic value that can't be messed around. As far as the government allowing it, the history was, banks always used to exist. And then with the Bank of England, they decided that it was in their interest to have a monopoly on banking at a country. And so what we did is every country treasures its monopoly on controlling the supply and demand. They don't want other monies to be operating or competing because things can get out of control. So I think that it would be very likely that you will have it under a certain set of circumstances outlawed the way gold was outlawed. And you're watching that question arise in India today. India today is making the move to outlaw possession of it. Okay, so we have to see what that means. Now, can they do it? Now we get into the particulars. My understanding from people who are sort of in government surveillance and go on is, yes, they can understand, they can track it, they can know who's dealing with it. I don't know, I'm not an expert on that. But there's a whole way, is it private wallets? Is it not private wallets? How do you do this, and the other thing? I would suspect it would be very hard to hold up against that kind of action. So that's what it looks like. I'd say politically, it's a reality that there are two political parties. In both cases, that there are rather extreme elements to that. We can call it capitalist and socialist, or we can call it whatever we want to call it, but there's a range. And there is not much in the middle. It's difficult to be in the middle because they have to align with either of those. So in terms of, let's say, economic policies, generally speaking, there's not much, it's tough to fight with both your Democrats and the Republicans. And what does that mean? Things like the wealth tax might be a litmus test. But in any case, I think that there is a big movement to deal with those gaps I'm referring to. So we should expect significant increases in taxes and so on in various ways. We can get into our discussion about that if you want. And depending on whether that's done smartly or not, will affect the markets. For example, when we cut corporate taxes, that benefited stock prices. Depending on how the tax rates are changed and so on, that will certainly affect asset prices and capital flows. I'm not an ideologue. I'm basically somebody who basically thinks if you move the lever this way, what will happen? That's basically it.
Yeah.
What I did was do a study of all the cases of wealth taxes in different countries that have existed, and look what happened at those, and I passed that along. I didn't comment on that, but there are facts, which is like I looked at 33 cases, and in none of those cases were they sustained and raising a significant amount of money. In some cases, like Switzerland has a wealth tax, it's a very small tax and it was sustained. Norway has a tax and it was small and it's sustained. Those that are big haven't lasted because of a variety of reasons. They're operationally difficult and so on, illiquid assets. I won't get into all that. But there are different types of ways of taxing wealth. And so you'll see, I think you'll see the easier ways to tax wealth become more popular, such as stepped up basis. In other words, nowadays, when you die, you get if your assets appreciated, you don't have to pay the capital gains tax on that and the inheritance tax. I think that's probably in jeopardy. And I think that you'll find different other types, property taxes, other things, they may come about. But that's my thought on the wealth taxes in general. They also have the big risk is this an environment that's hospitable for capitalism and capitalists? That affects capital flows a lot. And it's not just affecting American capital flows. Americans think it's just Americans. No. Foreigners own way more bonds, American bonds, than Americans own. So just the whole notion of where to go, where it's safe market for capitalism and capitalists has an effect on capital flows. So those are the mechanics. Every empire rises and declines. For those who are interested, I studied this. I needed to study for reserve currency, so I studied this going back 500 years, and it's on LinkedIn. It's called The Changing World Order. You could see the patterns, and you could see what's happening. China has gone from, I started going there 36 years ago. They were dirt poor. I would bring a calculator and give it to gifts like CEOs, and they thought they were miracle devices. Now they are, in many ways, in AI and quantum computing and so on, at a comparable type of level. So China, by all measures of its power and prosperity, is a very, very strong competitor. So now you have the leading empire. 1945, we created the American world order because we won World War II. And so we had a new monetary system and so on. And now we're having a challenge of that, partially because of Chinese, but partially also how we're handling ourselves. I mean, we're not doing great in handling ourselves in a lot of the most basic ways. So yes, we have that conflict. In China's, I would say it's I've had a lot of contact there over decades. And I really believe it's an evolutionary process. There are certain things from the Chinese perspective. They would believe if you can't suppress or compress me, that would be their view, that the United States is trying to do that. I suspect there will be tensions. And the question is whether, one side becomes too confrontational to let evolution take its course. But it's true that evolution is more on China's side than our side, although it really depends whether we can get our basics right. And our basics are things like broad-based public education, the quality of education, civility of the people. Do people work together in a civilized way, or are they at each other's throats? And, innovation and, those things. So China is a very exciting place. If you spend time there and you see what's going on with entrepreneurship, the creation of new businesses, new investment in things, and there's an energy, and it's quite something.